of the association for the wholesome support and encouragement in the past 3 years that led to the successes achieved in this administration. I wish to use this medium to appreciate all PENGASSAN members worldwide for their steadfast support, because of you all, the road would have been more daunting and increasingly overwhelming. State of the association. Distinguished comrades, when we came aboard, our statement was to build a world-class association that is rooted in professionalism, national patriotism, respect for members, security of jobs, enhancement of welfare benefits, and upholding employees in high esteem. In furtherance to this philosophy, the following were achieved since the last NEC meeting that was held in December 2022. Condition of service for members. We have continuously prioritized the issues of members and staff welfare across the length and breadth of the industry. Since our last NEC meetings, we have had a gale of promotions and CBA negotiations that have led to improved condition of service for our members. A lot of agencies and a lot of companies that ought to have promoted our members with several years of backlog of promotions, they were meant to do what was right. End of service benefit to ADAX and ADAX Contra branch. I am glad to report that the protracted discussion and negotiations between the association, NMPC management, and ADAS management on the end of service contract and benefit for ADAS in-house and contract branches has ended in praise. All our members in both branches have been paid their entitlements. All our members in ADAS Contra branch and most of our members in the in-house branch have been re-engaged. So, comrades, this was a bit thorny because we insisted that every single member in the branch, both in the in-house and the contract, that their entitlement and end of service should be paid. So at the time when they did that, normally once they pay the end of service contract and the end of service benefit, that should have been the terminal point. But we were able to also push to ensure that in the ADAS contract, everybody that were willing to work, their jobs as of today are retained. Then for all those in the in-house, as of today, majority of those who are still willing to work, their job has been retained. And they have also assured us that when production pick up, that every other person will be brought back. But this is without prejudice to the fact that they've all been paid their entitlement. Unionization of new branches. Aggressive efforts have been made in unionizing more branches and increasing our ranks. To this end, several new branches have been registered since the last NEC, and all these will be reported in the National Delegate Conference coming up in May 2023. Sectorial issues, fuel crisis and refinery. PENGASSAN empathizes with Nigerians on the hardship currently faced with the scarcity and drastic hike in the price of PMS across the country. The national leadership of PENGASSAN has been following up with our members in NMPC Trading Limited, who are responsible for assigning the products to marketers, and our teaming members from NMDPRA in various depots and terminals across the country that are responsible for issuing cargo clearances, tracking compliance, route inspection, metering, calibration, and maintenance, accurate delivery to trucks, record keeping, etc., on the needs to carry out their functions expeditiously. We have called on the management of NMDPRA to compel all marketers and retailers to make the product available at approved prices. They should immediately mobilize all their staff in various locations across the country to track compliance, and anyone found wanting should have their license revoked. We will keep close tab on this. Our association restates the commitment to continue its advocacy on the needs to feed the nation's refinery. And with the inclusion of PENGASSAN in the steering committee as set up by NMPC Limited, it shall continue the agitation for the rehabilitation of the 4 refineries through engagement with other relevant stakeholders. Functional local refinery will not only increase the nation's revenue base, They will also provide more jobs for our youth, as well as end the uncertainty in the subsidy regime and product importation. While maintaining our support for the full deregulation of the sector and acknowledging the significant milestones achieved in this regard, we counsel that effort be made to increase the pace of the current rehabilitation exercise and get them back on track in no time. Anti-labor management in oil and gas industry. Comrades, we have observed with total dismay the blatant refusal of some of the capitalists in the sector to allow workers who have indicated interest in joining the association to do so. The companies identified as notorious in this anti-worker posture and modern-day slavery from our investigation include Brewside Nigeria Limited, Ofadri Nigeria Limited, Enasco Energy, Belema Oil Producing Nigeria Limited, Dyke Engineering Limited, and Seplar Petroleum Development Company. We will intensify effort and use all the arsenals within our right to make them do the needful, as it is within our right to do so. State of the nation. After the election, what next? The 2023 general election has been concluded with winners announced by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. A lot of irregularities and violence marked this exercise in different parts of the country. This was ascertained by several credible and local observers. The major flaws was the use of BVAS in uploading results into IREV. Nigerians hailed the introduction of bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS, and the result viewing portal, IREV, as a game changer. Despite all the sacrifices made by the ordinary Nigerians to go out and wait in long queues to obtain their PVCs, strenuously cast their votes, and the billions of taxpayer money budgeted for the conduct of this election, INEC failed in meeting the expectations of Nigerians. This failure on the part of INEC to upload results from polling unit to IREV portal climaxed an election that was challenged by late arrival of INEC personnel and materials in some areas, bypass of BVAS in some cases, suppression of results, and outright voters' intimidation and coercion in some instances. Despite all the shortcomings, we hereby appeal to all those aggrieved by the election outcome to follow the provision of the law in seeking redress. The various tribunals must be charged to deliver justice to the satisfaction of all well-meaning Nigerians, as they are the last hope of the teeming masses of the country. Disobedience of court judgments. One of the hallmarks of democratic principles is obedience to the rule of law. However, there are some ugly developments in this regard that point to the country as practicing a dictatorial tendency, which was the hallmark of past military regime and dark ages. For any democracy to thrive, respect for the rule of law and human rights, as well as adherence to institutions established to shape the countries, are key. Flagrant disregard for any of these often weakens democratic tenets. Surprisingly, it is the same individual who have sworn to discharge their duties to the best of their ability, but are now confidently disobeying the Constitution and disregarding the orders of the court, thereby making mockery of us all. Equally sad were cases of selective interpretation and implementation of court judgments, which we also see as retrogressive and undemocratic. Consequently, as this administration prepares to wind down, we advise that all judicial pronouncements and judgments should be addressed or cleared before the incoming regime resumes. We demand that the head of EFCC, Inspector General of Police, the Attorney General of the Federation should obey the court pronouncement issued against them or be ready to be committed to the correctional center, as no one individual or entity should be above the law. The standard of living. The standard of living of most of our citizens have been a case of a hand to mouth. Poverty and crime are rampant on the back of unemployment of more than 60% of those that are able and willing to work. Despite promises by successive governments, the country remained in dark the country remains in darkness due to lack of power, thereby stifling the growth and investment that are so badly needed to create jobs and lift people out of poverty. Recall that Nigeria started its journey of independence about the same time as countries like Malaysia, South Korea, Singapore, to name a few. All these countries have long overtaken us, despite our oil wealth, and joined the leagues of industrialized countries. The high cost of living and other economic issues have combined to worsen the current situation, leading to an increase in the country poverty index. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, 133 million Nigerians are multidimensionally poor out of 200 million citizens. This is quite worrisome. This is against the fact that the country is endowed with human and natural resources. The failure of the previous government and current leaders to manage the resources of a state has resulted in the failure of governance. One would be correct if said that the past 63 years have been the story of leadership that have failed its people and the nation that is tending towards a failed state. Our hospitals are dangerously equipped with doctors armed only with stethoscope and drips, while the rest of the world are racing ahead with modern technology. We challenge the new government to do things differently by caring and valuing the lives of the citizens. We are recommending that key ministries should be headed by professionals and experts, as political party loyalty or membership should not be a yardstick for ministerial and institutional appointments. Corruption. The cancer called corruption seems to be proliferating. It is the cause of dilapidation of our institutions and national wealth. What still is the lack of resolve to eradicate it through different means, including consequence management. Cases of corruption in and out of government have continued to compound the country woes, even as resources that are expected to contribute to gradually reducing the poverty rate are siphoned off by few people who take advantage of their positions in government. Sample cases like that of the ex-accountant general of the Federation, who allegedly misappropriated 109 billion naira, with the EFCC said to have recovered only a paltry sum of 30 billion, and also the case of a former EFCC head who was arrested and later sacked over mishandling of recovered loot and selling seized assets, have been swept under the carpet. So also are the cases whose investigation have been concluded, ongoing or stalled. All these have made corruption war a lip service. It is our expectation that the incoming government will urgently carry out due diligence, appraisal of operational apparatus of the EFCC, ICPC, and other agencies charged with the responsibility of fighting corruption, with a view of making them much more effective. Currency swap controversy. While the recent currency redesign may be well-intentioned, especially against vote buying at the just concluded general elections, planners and handlers miscalculated the overarching effect on the masses and ran afoul of a common good of the masses of the country. The unnecessary anguish, compounded misery, frustration, protest, arson, and general instigation of anarchy should have been avoided where all key actors, the presidency, central bank, commercial bank, and other financial institutions were more discretionary. Nigerians have been betrayed by the banking system, which has been unable to pay them their money on demand. They have also been failed by the federal government, which unilaterally decided to change the three highest denomination of the currency, fixed date for the change, and is utterly incapable either to deliver a promise or protect the populace from financial strangulation. We sympathize with Nigerians for these avoidable pains. Therefore, PENGASSAN demands CBN to flood the banks and ATMs with more naira notes to ease the sufferings of Nigerians. In conclusion, my dear comrades and gentlemen of the press, in these challenging times in the lives of our association and the nation, as we fight to get better pay level and restoration of dignity to the workforce, we must do everything possible to create a safer industrial environment. We must stick together and support each other. We have a proud history of working together and supporting each other, even in the most troubled times. We should be proud of what we have achieved over the past 45 years as comrades. I wish us all a fruitful deliberation during the National Executive Council meeting, while wishing you all a successful transition into a new democratic dispensation as Nigerians, even as we prepare for our 7th Triennial Delegate Conference, NDC 2023. Thank you all for listening, and do have a fruitful deliberation. God bless you all. Solidarity. Solidarity.
There is victory for all. There is victory for all. In the struggle for our union, there is victory for all.
Yes, if you remember very well, sometime in 2016, PENGASSAN in the National Executive Council meeting in Calabar, May 2016 precisely, deliberated on the issue of fuel subsidy and believed that the downstream sector of the oil and gas industry will actually grow much more if that sector is deregulated. And in the last 7 years, we have actually maintained that stand. We have maintained that stand, not minding some of the side effects. But again, if you look at this subsidy, at times, we tend to be trying to hold on to something while we are losing in some other areas. If you look at the cost of living has gone up drastically by over times 3, times 4 in the last 2-3 years. If you look at the driver of why the cost of living has actually moved to where it is today, is actually because of the fact that our exchange rate has plummeted. Before now, our exchange rate used to be somewhere around 100 plus to $1, 100 plus naira to $1. But today, it's closely around 800. It even moved beyond the 800 sometime last year. So now, why is this exchange rate moving up? Because we are not earning foreign exchange. Most of the money we ought to have earned as a country, we are using them. The oil and gas is where we earn about 80 to 90% of our foreign exchange. But at the end of the day, this money is not being used in paying subsidy, importing PMS, and when you now import this PMS, what will not happen in return? You will not sell in naira. So that has shrinking our dollar reserve. And because our dollar reserve has shrunk to the level it is today, that is actually why our exchange rate has plummeted. So now, if we address this problem, if we look at domestic refining and we also look at the issues bordering on subsidy, if we address this, Nigerians and the Nigerian government will earn more money from the crude oil sales. And that money will go into CBN. It will shore up our reserves, and it will support lots of other imports and the pressure in USD. So when this happens, our naira will appreciate. So again, when we look at one sector, we must find a way. How does it connect with the overall Nigeria economy? So we believe that if this is done, it has a way of affecting having positive impact on our foreign exchange, which will in turn have that impact on the citizens. That is one. Then secondly as well, our position has also been that there are some basic things that government must do as well. Our push has actually led today to the rehabilitation going on, most especially in Port Harcourt Refinery. In fact, we were discussing with the leadership of the sector a few days ago that we want a press tour of the Port Harcourt refinery to see what is actually happening, so that we expose it to the world and to know the level of work that is going on there. This is a departure from the past. In the past, we have heard about turnaround maintenances, but we only read them in the pages of newspaper. But today, I can confirm to you that the level of work going on in Port Harcourt refinery is greatly unprecedented. So maybe one of these days, we all will go there together and we'll see. Then we are also encouraging government. If you remove subsidy today, where are you going to put the money? If, for example, removing subsidy can, number one, solve ASO's problem permanently, so that ASO will never go on strike again. Who are the people that are attending public institutions? They are the children of the downtrodden. The politicians, their kids are all abroad. So if we can solve that problem permanently, that is a good one. If we can also use it in addressing healthcare, that is another good one. But again, because of the trust deficit, over the years, it is always a problem. That is why Labour and government must sit down to define the processes, to define the palliative that must be put in place for the Nigerian masses, so that we will feel this impact when it's finally done. First of all, if you remove subsidy for it, okay, like the Shopee that they did at the time, they used those Shopee to build some roads. So if you look at those roads, they are still there today. So if you say how long, depending on when the road would, you understand, the roads are there. So if you use it, for example, like PTF, Petroleum Trust Fund, you remember then, Petroleum Trust Fund, there are roads that Petroleum Trust Fund built. There are some hospitals in northern Nigeria today that were built with the proceeds from PTF. So if we can design a vehicle like that, so that intervention will not just be a temporary intervention. If you take some of this money and you use them to build hospitals, those hospitals will be everlasting. If you use this money to build quality roads, the roads will be there. If you use this money to address some of the fundamentals that are affecting Nigerians, like the ASU problem, like you go to universities and you address the infrastructural challenges that we have in our universities today, they will be there for a very long while. So we are not saying that government should just take them, buy 1 or 2 buses, and after 1 or 2 years, the buses fade away. No, that is not what we are saying. But put this money in infrastructure that Nigerians can reckon with. The things we can see and the things we can measure, not the ones that you tell us that you are transferring conditional money transfer that me and you cannot verify. Government should fix the refinery. We do not support the sales of any of these refineries, and we will fight it with every arsenal in our disposal. We don't support the sales. Fix the refinery. Once you fix it, government cannot transit and become a minority shareholder. For example, like the case of NLNG. NLNG model is working today because Nigerian government owns 49% of the shares, and the private sector made up of Shell, Total, and Ajib owns about 51% of the shares. So that makes the private sector, the decision makers. But government owns 49%. And for us, that 49% can also be, a percentage of it can also be listed in the Nigeria Stock Exchange. So we can replicate the NLNG model because it has worked in the past, it is working today, so we can bring that to ensure that the refineries are working in the future.
Sir, please, excuse me. Will PENGASSAN support removal of fuel subsidy when domestic refineries have not started working?
Yes. So today now, there are a few things that must be considered. Like what I have said. How does this subsidy regime tie in to other areas? Number one. The reason we are pushing for refinery to work is because of the fact that refinery working will create multifaceted jobs in the industry, and it will deepen the value chain. That is actually why we are pushing. Today, if you look at the cost of importation of PMS, and even the cost to produce locally, because the primary source is crude, and that crude is sold at international price. So, and that the crude cost contribute over 80 to 90% of the overall PMS cost. So it will not necessarily bring down the price. So the reason we are agitating that the refinery should be working is practically because we want more jobs to be created and we want the value chain to be deepened. But coming to the other side, today we have the Dangote refinery. The government has also taken a stake of about 20%. So our push is that government should increase their stake in that at all. Because Dangote refinery can actually meet our self-sufficiency today. And Dangote refinery as of today, they are doing some level of pre-commissioning. That means, all things being equal, between now and the end of June, July, it should come on stream. But they are also skeptical to come on stream because we have not addressed the issue of subsidy. So it's actually the issue of chicken and egg which comes first. So we must not descend into anarchy. As PENGASSAN, we are institution. So we must not encourage people to take arm. Okay, if you don't resort to court, what will be the next? We all take AK-47, we all take guns and start killing ourselves. That is the option. So what are the options that are available to us today? So as an institution, what we will do, partnering with other labor institutions and civil society, is to pressure the court system to do what is right. It's to pressure them to do what is right. And it's also to be vigilant. And it's not just left for labor centers and civil societies alone, the entire Nigerians. We must be interested in what is happening in our judiciary. We must be interested in what is happening in our court processes. Not that after election we fold our arm and we let everything go like that. No, we must clearly be interested. I believe that when they know, it's just like the legislature. Can you recount the number of laws that they have passed that the people will shout and they will all go back? It has happened not once, not twice, not 3 times, countless number of times. So the same way, we have beamed our searchlight on the legislators over the years. If we do exactly the same thing on the judiciary, I believe they will do what is right. I read what the IPMA released, saying about 750 if it's deregulated today. It is not correct. Because the IPMA was using, there was also a caveat, if you read it well, that if they get dollar from CBN. So today, the sole importer of PMS into Nigeria is the NNPC. And the NNPC is using an exchange rate of CBN, which gives roughly about 400 to 450 naira, depending on the day and depending on the window that you are looking at. So if you compute that into the model today, PMS should be selling for a region of about 360 to 400 naira, thereabout. Yeah, it's not up to what was said. I said because the IPMAN, they were calculating based on parallel market rate. But if you look at the difference between parallel market and the CBN rate, it is somewhere in the region of about 300 naira plus. So hold on. No. What will happen is that if you look at PIA, NNPC has been mandated to ensure energy security in Nigeria. So what that means is that NNPC at the end of the day will still be doing that intervention. So NNPC have an arm, former PPMC, that has now metamorphosed into NNPC trading. So part of their mandate is to ensure that PMS are brought into the country at a price that is manageable. So by the time NNPC continues that business, I can tell you, because they earn a lot of foreign exchange, they sell crude oil on behalf of government. So them having USD, they don't even need to have much recourse to CBN because they have foreign exchange that they can use. And their foreign exchange is not priced at parallel market, but their foreign exchange is actually priced at CBN rate.